Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me, as always, are my co-hosts Tim Kalinowski and Nick Martin. Gentlemen, we have a deep 11-game slate to get to on Thursday night. A lot of huge games for playoff races, divisional races, all that. Some lottery bowls as well. Um, but with a slate this big and this dramatic. We'll have to start with their favorite underdogs, of course, and a team that we've been talking about quite a bit lately gave the Edmonton Oilers a run for their money in Alberta on Tuesday night, and Nick, they landed on your plate as your favorite underdog on Thursday night too.
Yeah, the Canadians are priced at plus 240 almost everywhere at the time of recording. I think that's way too long right now with how they're playing versus the Canucks. They've cleaned up their process a lot. Sam Montembeault's still an excellent goaltender. You could see how much they were full value versus the Oilers. I think anyone who watched that complete game would be probably kind of surprised by this number. Granted, that's been one game, but I do think this whole road trip, they've been pretty sharp. I thought they were very, very unlucky in the Calgary game, which was part of why I loved the Capitals on Monday. Um, and I just think right now Vancouver's too likely to get into kind of close matchups like we saw with Buffalo the other night. And that was kind of one of their better games recently. So this number still looks really long to me. I think we're seeing some of these lottery teams really dip in form right now and kind of just get into just the final stretch of nothingness. I don't think Montreal's one of them. And that Oilers game, I would say they were probably the better team. That was a pretty damn unlucky finish with the double minor being called that like if Kane kind of caused it anyways. It was kind of a tough call. I know you gave that one out, Mike, so another tough beat. The other thing I don't mind here is the overtime at plus 410 and the under 6.5. I know it's a lot of plays in one game, but they all kind of correlate. So I think some sort of combination of those is a fun way to attack this game. I think the Canadians are playing a lot better defensively than they have for most of the year. Still have a really good goaltending, so that kind of keeps all those avenues open in this matchup.
Yeah, I tend to concur. I took the under there, Nick, with you as well. I think you make a great point about Montreal just being a team that really hasn't quit. We've seen so many of these teams, Ottawa, who you could say has quit for almost the full season. But a lot of these bottom of the barrel teams come to mind in terms of just kind of throwing their hands up in the air and playing out the string. Canadians don't really fall into that category. I also just like what you're saying about kind of a lower variance type game. That's the type of game we want. If you're betting Montreal, so you're right, those things are correlated. I I'm scared to put a bet on the Habs after having my heart broken last night with the Oilers game. It's difficult, so I'm just going to go with the under here. But I definitely agree with all the avenues you mentioned.
Yeah, I'm into. I think all you need to do to see the value on the Habs right now is if you go back to the end of February, their last game in February, which is a 4-3 loss to the Panthers in a shootout. They followed that up with a 4-3 loss to the Lightning in a shootout, a 4-3 win over the Predators in overtime, a loss to the Hurricanes, which wasn't as close. Then they lost 3-2 with a late third period goal by the Maple Leafs, beat the Blue Jackets, lost in overtime to the Bruins, didn't have it against the Flames, and then an overtime loss in Edmonton on Tuesday. So this team is just playing really tight games and doing a good job against a tough schedule. So it continues on Thursday night. I'm happy to back them at this kind of price.
Yeah,
Then,
and the other notes I was just gonna slide in quick. They outplayed the Flames pretty bad. I think that was a pretty tough loss. They were up by about an expected goal on most models. I fully agree with that. Maybe the game script skewed that a little more than kind of the adjusted goal score says, but still. And then the other huge difference I think that is really relevant when you're talking about them compared to any of the other like pure lottery teams is they actually have a goalie. So you're not like looking at their expected goals data and then also needing to factor in that they're just going to get demolished because of their lesser goaltending. That's not really where they're at. So yeah, I think that's a good pick for sure.
okay. Uh, on to our next underdog. I'll go with the Seattle Kraken. Um, Perhaps they will fall into that group of teams that just give up on the season, considering where they are, kind of like where they've been heading all year, which was kind of on the fringes of the playoff race. That said, like they are playing Vegas. They're plus 154 underdog in at the Fortress. The Knights are the team that they'd technically be chasing, but they're 11 points back. So I guess if they want to like convince themselves, go for it. But that's getting too much into it. I just think at the current junction that we're at right now, the Kraken are at a little bit of a low watermark in terms of their price, and the Knights are still trying to figure it out. Like they lost to the Lightning the other night in a game that I thought that Vegas was gonna at least put up a better performance. I'm just waiting to see it, and it could come. Like they could be timing this actually perfectly, but it's not there yet. And we know that Seattle can be a tough out if they get the goaltending. So I'll take my lumps here with the Kraken and give them one more shot before we start to throw them into that betting black hole, Nick.
Yeah, I'm close with the Kraken here. I'm kind of leaning with you. We talked about how lucky we were to get the Knights win in that one game where everyone just ended up on the Knights versus the Kraken, and that really ended the Kraken season. And Vegas was really lucky to pull off that 4-2 comeback. So I can see the avenue for it. I don't think the Kraken have quit, and I think for them this is a game they'll really be up for. I'd love to see Vince Dunn get back in the lineup and then see maybe if the numbers moved overnight and Dunn is finally going to play. It sounds like he's been so close to playing like 3 times in a row. Then I might end up here with you, but yeah, I can definitely see it for sure. I think that we know this Vegas team right now a little questionable. Not my best call on them back in the Lightning. I think the thing is that we've kind of talked about it, even as like Mantha and Hannafin get back in there and they kind of get acclimated to having the whole team. The problem right now is that Hill is just not in form. And then, maybe he's just not the goalie that he was for like what was kind of a small-ish sample. So there's enough question marks for sure that I can definitely see where you're coming from here.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I looked at this, I was trying to look for an excuse to bet Vegas, but at the price, I was like, no chance. I don't feel good about that. And I just can't quite get there on. I guess that what that leads me to think is there's value on Seattle if I was too afraid to bet Vegas at that price. But instead, I think for me, it's going to be overtime. It's going to be my bet here. I think that a team like Vegas, they need to take a page out of a Phillies handbook and just hold serve here. Like just hold serve. And I think they should be playing a style of hockey where it's like, let's just get a point here. Let's be totally content with protecting Hill, playing a strong two-way game, which is their bread and butter when they're humming, and it's kind of the back end out for them in the cup run last year. So obviously we know that Seattle isn't crazy threatening on the offensive side of things, and if they can get good goaltending, this is that type of low scoring game. So I'm hoping for overtime here. That's going to be my look.
And to round out the underdogs, Tim, you're going with the New York Rangers.
Yeah, New York Rangers slight dog against Boston at Boston. These are two teams that I bet against a lot. It turns out I'm going to be, I guess, betting against one of them again. But yeah, I'm on the Rangers here. I think that when you look at this price, it's, home ice for Boston, and then it's saying that Boston's slightly better than the Rangers. And I don't totally know that that's true. I think they're, way closer to even. I think that their formulas in the regular season have been pretty similar in terms of their 5-on-5 is okay, and the Bruins have been bailed out by their goaltending for longer stretches than the Rangers have this season. It just hasn't been as consistent for New York. We saw that against Winnipeg on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, whatever the hell night that was. But yeah, I just think that this isn't enough Rangers love here, and so I'm willing to take a shot at the plus. What am I looking at now? Plus 116, the Rangers.
Yeah, I like it too. I think plus 116 is a little bit too long. These teams kind of have comparable profiles right now. There's things you can nitpick, but I still think what the Rangers have going on is pretty close to Boston. Don't hate the spot for a road underdog at all either, with the Rangers kind of having a bit of a letdown last time out versus the Jets. I think that Sens game was kind of, it almost showed why it was such an idiotic pick to pick the Sens, because I feel like they were skating with the Bruins and it could have gone differently, but it's never going to go differently when you're talking about Ottawa's goalies versus the Bruins goalies. So I think that any team is kind of liable to play 50-50 with the Bruins right now. I think that includes the Rangers. So I'm with you. I think kind of a low variance coin flip type game here is the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah, definitely would be the Rangers for me in this spot too. I think you can kind of gripe with their schedule spot against that Jets was 6-9, but it's still pretty packed schedule for them. This will be their seventh game in 11 days and a tough opponent. But uh, yeah, coin flip sounds just about right for Rangers and Bruins, so I'll take the plus 114. Onto the big board next, the Philadelphia Flyers coming off of a win against the Maple Leafs in a good effort at home with Sean Couturier eating popcorn and John Tortorella, holding court. Classic Flyers, classic Tortorella. They get the win against the Leafs, but now their gauntlet continues. They now have the Hurricanes up next in Raleigh, Carolina coming off just like a basic sleptwalk. They could have sleptwalked through that game against the Islanders. They were in no danger of losing that one after they went up 1-0 basically. They're minus 230 as you'd imagine, a big favorite at home. Flyers plus 190. Total here 6. Of course, this game means a lot to both teams with Philly trying to lock down a playoff spot. Carolina chasing the division title with the Rangers, chasing a President's Trophy perhaps as well. We talk about the Flyers being the type of team you want to back as an underdog, and their big price here, it does feel tempting. But with the way Carolina looks and the amount of rubber that Sam Ersson and that uh, wonky defense, the banged up defense for the Flyers is going to have to face, it does feel a little bit still too short on Philadelphia here, Nick.
Yeah, I agree. I'm close to wanting to bet Carolina in some fashion. I think that team's just really going right now. Yeah, I mean, you look at it, Gensel's playing great and Kuznetsov's playing great, and all of a sudden they have a top 6 that looks pretty talented and pretty damn good when they're already owning all the play anyways. So feels like everything's kind of coming up Canes right now. I think they're kind of rightfully being power rated as the top team in the league, right, with the Panthers and the Oil. So I don't hate it. And I think to talk quick about like the Flyers thing, because there's so many, it's been such a huge thing. We've seen so many like ex-players chime in being like, this is such torts and all this stuff. But I think the part that everyone's kind of missing is Couturier's form had dropped off recently. I'm not trying to argue that that one's not a little controversial, but he was in bad form. And Atkinson and Stahl are worse than the guys who came in, or at least close. I don't know a lot about Ginning, but I know Stahl is horrible enough that it's possible he's right there. So everyone's talking about it like it's such a power move to wake up the roster, but I think it was truly like we're going to try to play our best lineup thing. And it did work out. So we'll see. Like, I'm guessing they'll get Couturier back in some way, but I think the other two should probably stay out. And maybe that does raise Philly's floor a touch because we'd really seen the defensive core was disastrous recently and they got by last night versus Toronto. I don't know though. I think the Canes right now are just kind of at another level, and I don't know how much I'll be fading them down the stretch.
But Nick, it's their captain. No, they I look at this and look, Philly, it's been well documented what their stretch is coming up here. It is a gauntlet leave off, like you said, but if they can just get through this, it softens up after this little 4-game stretch or 5-game stretch. And they're already, I would say, playing with a little house money after getting the full 2 points against Toronto on Tuesday night. So it's still pretty positive for Philly, I would say. But when you talk about Carolina, a team that just absolutely tilts the ice for 60 minutes, and a Philly team that not just on the ice, but seemingly at a macro level as well, kind of hanging on by the skin of their teeth. That's not a great team to be playing against in the Carolina Hurricanes when you're in that situation. So I wish there was maybe a 3-way, but I'm nervous about overtime. I don't know. I'm definitely interested in Carolina. That would be like a parlay piece for me with this big slate, maybe. But I am looking at 2 6.5s still out there right now. Excuse me. And I would take the under. These are both under teams. Philly has been 2 and 8 to the under, 2 overs, 8 unders in their last 10. That's a style that I think they kind of have no choice but to play. So yeah, I'm interested in that 6.5 if you can still get it.
Yeah, and I'll touch quick on the like wild card race, Tim, because I think everyone's kind of in like it's like an interesting talking point right now. And Philly's got the really tough schedule, but the Caps is just as tough, and then the other teams are playing terribly. So I kind of think there's like no advantage really with like much of it. Like it's kind of hard to handicap where that might be going because I think like the Wings still showed pretty terribly last night versus Columbus. I don't need to tell Leboff about the Isles. And then you look at the rest of the clump. Like it feels like they're all, like you say, Philly getting like that one tough win really did gain a lot of ground
Yeah.
because I think it's going to be kind of like a little like kind of lull where every team's just not winning a lot. So yeah, it should be a good finish here.
Yeah, we said ahead of that Toronto game that was probably their most winnable. It was a weird one because you look at it, they were an underdog. Toronto is a better team than them, but that was the game that they kind of had to have during the stretch. It's Carolina, a back-to-back at home against Boston, then Florida, and then the Rangers on 2 days later. So a 4-6 stretch starting here for Philly. You touched on the Capital schedule is pretty brutal. The Islanders still have a couple tough games left this week before their softens up a bit. And the Wings have the easiest schedule of the bunch, but they are in probably the worst long-term form of them all. So let's talk about those Wings. We don't have to talk about the Islanders though. Red Wings are -120. The other team is +100, and the total is 6.5. I said it to you guys before the show that in if I was a like a beat writer or a columnist for one of these two teams, I would present this matchup as a team in just poor form in terms of their on ice process. That would be Detroit, and then another team that is completely devoid of any sort of mental strength, and that would be the other team. This game would it's such a tempting price to back the Islanders at as a slight underdog here because I think that in a vacuum, if you just threw all the baggage out the window and into the cold sea, you would say that they're the better team. They've got the goaltending edge, even with Sorokin in wonky form. It could be Varlamov. I'm kind of expecting it to be Varlamov. But that said, it takes some serious stones to bet the Islanders. After what we've seen from them the past 8 days, Nick.
Yeah, it's funny because it was February 29th, Thursday slate. We gave out the Isles. I think they were +114 at the time of recording when the
And
Islanders
the Red
played
Wings
in
had just won
Detroit.
6 in a row too.
Yep. And that started the Isles win streak, right?
Yes,
And then
it started
Detroit
the
went
Red
on that
Wings losing
8 game.
streak.
Yeah. And now,
Sliding
I mean,
doors.
that would maybe make the case for the Islanders at this price, but Detroit might get Larkin back. We've maybe seen the worst of it. The Isles last stretch has been pretty horrific. So I'm kind of just at a point where I don't really have a lean in terms of like wanting to make a play. I think it's a very interesting game. I really want to see how the Isles respond and what Detroit has in the
They don't
tank.
respond.
Yeah. I do like that Detroit finally pulled the trigger and got Edvinsson up there. It's one minor thing, but that defense core was just in such like shambles that I feel like it's like, it was a respectable idea, but I don't think that's enough to like fully turn the tides. They didn't look good versus Columbus. So for me, I'm just like, let's just see how this
I
one
guess it's
goes.
it's it's one of those situations where if you were going to bet the Islanders, Tim, like you might as well just back them in the playoff market because you're getting a better price. You're getting them like 2-1 to make the playoffs, and this is a huge game, obviously for probability, especially. So if Washington loses on Wednesday night, we're recording this before Wednesday. That's actually the avenue I would take if you were looking to bet the Islanders here.
No, you're 100% right. So I think I had a sneeze coming. Do I have it? No. Anyway, yeah, I think that if you are backing the Islanders, just go look at the playoff numbers instead and bet that. So I don't want to touch either of these teams with a 10-foot pole. It seems coin flippy, and that would lead you to be on the dog here and the Islanders at even money or so. But I don't really want to put actual dollars on the Islanders anymore. Nick, you made a good point about us being on the Islanders in that Detroit game a couple weeks ago. And you said it felt good it feels like we should just take that Islanders win and like, okay, thank you. That's enough Islanders. Like I have had enough Islanders. And I would further this point, and I thought Patrick Waugh's comments were pretty interesting after the loss on Tuesday night. He kind of, Lebov, you and I were talking about this before the show, that he did the old, he was encouraging them a lot. And he was like, I actually liked our second and third or whatever. And I'm like, well, don't you think Carolina was content to be up 3-0 in the second and third? He's like, I like how we shut it down after that. Like, Don't you think Carolina's okay with that too? So, as a state championship winning assistant coach here, I can tell you that Waz's comments point out to me that he really he knows it's real tough in there, and he's going with the encouraging coach here is like patting them on the backs. You can still do it. And to me, that is a not so great sign. That means he knows that they might be in deep trouble here. So all that to say, in terms of a play, I think the total 6.5 is really interesting here. These two teams are over teams, but I could see this being a total staring contest and being afraid to make the big mistake. I don't know if I'll get there by puck drop, but that's just an interesting note I have on the total.
Yeah, I'm actually right with you. I'm pretty tempted. Like the under was my favorite lean, but I just decided on this slate we don't need to go there. And Detroit's just been so bad defensively for so long. Like we've seen them give up tons of chances to teams like Columbus and Arizona far too often lately. But I do feel like kind of like that Sabre spot on Saturday morning, 6.5 looks a little high. So I don't hate that at all.
Okay, on to the Blues and Senators up next. St. Louis plus 110 on the road. Ottawa minus 130. This total sitting at 6.5. With the way St. Louis's goaltending's gone, it's kind of scary to bet the over here, knowing that with the Senators, it's always horrifying to go the other way and bet unders with the way that their goaltending has been, their kind of lack of attention to detail, I guess you could say, as they've played hockey for 4 months now. But I am a little bit tempted by the Blues as an underdog, actually, and I probably shouldn't get there. I feel like I'm being tricked into this thing that St. Louis does, where they'll just rhyme off a few wins in a row because they've got some good players. They can get the goaltending, but against the Senators, that could be enough to justify an underdog price. So I don't know, Tim. I don't know.
Yeah, you said it. It feels like suckers bet city with St. Louis here. I mean, at what point, as handicapping this, do you just say like, yeah, Ottawa's underlying numbers make them technically better, but they just don't deserve to be favored against anyone because of how bad it can be, right? It's in they look quitty. Talk about the antithesis to the Canadians. They look done.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the difference is they have zero goaltending. So it's just, I think if I was to target this game, I was a little like actually tempted by Ottawa when they opened like minus 118 some places, but those are already gone. And I'd never wanted to get like bet on the Sens as a side again. I think the play that could be interesting is back in Binnington to go over a save prop. But again, we'll see where that's set because this number tells me that odds makers are pretty aware of the way like the actual even strength play is going to go. I think this could be like one of these spots where it looks close, but like Binnington's line set at 29.5 and Korpisalo's line or whoever plays is set at like 25.5, which kind of tells you the way they'll expect the game to go. But I agree. I mean, I'm not betting the Senators as a side. I'm just kind of saying I can see it. Like I bet the Senators will come out at home and own more of the play. But like Mike said, the Blues have been really, really good at winning games like that. They're getting great goaltending. I still kind of think it's like close to the time to fade them. I know we faded them successfully last night and they played okay, but I don't rate them like I mean basically I can see how the Sens are essentially being power rated exactly with them ahead of this game. So I don't know.
I think what we're basically saying is this line is really sharp. And
yeah, it is. And I think the Blues will be super popular. Right. Like everyone thinks the Sens are a complete joke. And it wouldn't surprise me if like they did find a way to win it. But I'm just saying, like, I can at least see where they're getting this number from.
Yeah. And Nick, not to sound like I don't watch hockey you're right. I mean, the Senators played the Bruins like five on five large stretches of that game. It's just at this point in the year, late March, how many times can you just get sunk by your goaltending? And like,
I think it's a completely valid point. Like it's a very fair point. And even like Andy McNeil, who strictly models it, he'll say exactly that. Like he's literally been I've heard him saying on specifically the Sens that he has an edge on this game based off his data, but he'll look past it because we've seen too many games where they just blow up and they never pay off that edge. And we're 70 games into the year. So it might be time to just put it to rest.
There's too many games on this slate I think this is one of those things you hear people say like 5 years ago, this line would be different, right? And it's just the fact that Ottawa's a favorite. I think a lot of people would be like, but the Blues have to win. And so I'm not touching. I don't want to go near it.
Sabres, Oilers up next. Buffalo plus 180. The Oilers minus 220, a total of 6 here. I didn't think Buffalo was all that impressive in a pretty tough schedule spot, nonetheless, but Devon Levi, a pretty good game against the Canucks. The Oilers, meanwhile, had to scratch and claw their way to a win against the Habs in overtime. Total of 6. I know a lot of times people have, or you two especially, would talk about these Sabres unders being a gift from the betting gods, but when it's against the Oilers, Tim, does it become too scary?
There are plenty of 6.5s out there right now. I bet under 6.5 at open, and it's because of that same reason, these Buffalo unders, but also too the fact that Edmonton, we get Skinner here. It was Pickard against Montreal on Tuesday night. So we do get Skinner here, and that makes me feel better about it. I think also too, Edmonton is in the point in their season right now where I think that they would like to feel good about their defensive play as well. So I just feel like it's a good recipe for an under here, and it can kind of make you feel sharp in a sense that I think a lot of people would just blindly look at this and be like, oh yeah, I can't bet an under with a team that with an Edmonton team involved in it, right? And a lot of people would think that Buffalo's probably in the same boat too, but I'm going to stay with these Buffalo unders. 6.5 for me is good enough.
Yeah, I think 6.5 to minus the current best number is minus 122. Even Bet365 actually opened this one at 6.5 and has now moved down to 6. So I think there was some bigger action coming in on the under from some solid bettors. I can see it. I think that like the greatest upside from that game versus Montreal for the Oilers was still their defensive play. I thought they were pretty sweltering, didn't give up a lot. No real faults with them on that front. I mean, it feels like one of these ones that's a little scary, but I still just think it's a little bit too high. I think that we've kind of seen the Sabres avenue for hanging around in games, and I don't necessarily see that changing at all right now. So I think we just got to ride out what's been working.
Any thoughts here on Hawks and Ducks? A lottery bowl with the Hawks sitting at plus 110, Ducks minus 130. This total sitting at 6. Nick, anything for you?
Yeah, I like the over. There's 5.5 minus 134 out there right now. I think that's worth a small play. And I kind of like the Ducks. I think if you wanted to play them together too, that's plus 197. I think that's reasonable. I've kind of been off on the Ducks all week, but I still feel like they're gonna get going. They've got more offensive pieces back than they've had. I feel like it's just like a buy low spot when you're playing a Hawks team that just kind of slapped them. But they didn't have all their guys at that point. They're getting healthier and healthier. I feel like we've seen the worst of it. It feels like kind of just the right time to buy on them, and I could see them kind of exposing what's still been a pretty dreadful process from the Hawks. So I do kind of like the Ducks here. I feel like if you want to bet that, or even some of their star players to have a big night, I think Leo Carlsson's been looking pretty good since he got back in the lineup. He almost had a really nice goal again last night. So those are kind of all the looks that I'm interested in here.
Yeah, I tailed you on that over. Just because I couldn't not have something on this incredible game, right? I would lean just from the quick glances of the dog and the Hawks, just because plus money and these two teams are so horrendous. I mean, Edmonton, Nick, like I fully believe you in that. Hey, they're getting healthier. I think we've seen the bottom, but it's just like, how much does that help when you've lost 7 in a row and it's been like non-competitive 7 in a row? It's really bad. So, good luck to you if you're really desperate for action on this game. I would, I talked about Carolina in a parlay piece. I'm totally fine with any of these in a fun round robin or something like that, just so you have eyeballs on it. But yeah, I mean, it is bad.
The first like, when these teams played on the 12th, we said it was an underrated game on the slate, and that game was awesome to us. I think like, every prop hit, the over hit. So I don't know. I think these ones can be like sneaky good because sometimes it's just I think you get two teams like that together and it's just absurd, and all the offensive stars are looking at it as like point night, and it sometimes just feels like I like betting these. So um yeah, join me.
No, no, it's funny, for as bad as they are, they each are looking at this game on the schedule the exact same way. They're like, hey, we can get one tonight. It's like,
Right. Okay, that wraps up the big board. Let's go on to best bets now, and we'll start with you, Nick. And I think I'm gonna call this the creepiest matchup of the night. The Bolts are minus 355 on the road in the Shark Tank. The San Jose Sharks plus 280. This total sitting at 6.5. Before I hand it to you for your best bet, I will note that I think there's a chance I end up on the Sharks as more money comes in on Tampa Bay. But uh, that is just playing into Tampa taking its foot off the pedal a bit here, knowing where they are in the standings and whatever. There could be a Jonas Johansson start, and hockey's weird. Sharks are terrible. They've got terrible goalies. So probably just a donation on my part.
Yeah, I think like my opinion is that's looking a little too far down kind of the bounce back angles and that sort of thing. I just think where the Sharks are at right now is we said it before that game the other night, the Preds, that I thought this team was just well below them, and the Hawks are kind of just well below everyone else right now. And I want to stick with that. I think with the Lightning have going on, I feel like they're going to find a way to kind of keep shoring up this playoff spot. And I am expecting Johansson, but I think that kind of plays into the plays I like. I'm going to say my favorite best bet over 5.5, and the over 5.5 and the Lightning to win at minus 115. I like that as a play. I think if you want to do 6.5 and get the better number, that's fine too. That's kind of what I had posted, but I do kind of prefer minus 115 and winning on 4-2 Lightning. So that's kind of my look here. I just think the Sharks have really lost it. Their defensive play is just horrific, and I don't really want to like overthink this one. I feel like the Lightning are just gonna expose that and get theirs. Maybe if Johansson's in, they let in a few more, but I'm kind of pro the Lightning just scoring like 4 or 5 here and staying hot.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows that Mackenzie Blackwood should win the Vezina.
Yeah.
I mean, what he did for this team. I mean, my goodness. Yeah, Nick, it's I stay up late for a lot of these, 10:30 games on the East Coast, and I don't know if this one's going to make the cut on the television set with the March Madness and other hockey on. So by all means, I might throw that same game parlay in as well there. But yeah, this is like good luck to you. This poor Sharks team, man, they're praying for the season end.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said too for the Lightning, and maybe this does. I don't know. I just don't think you need to overthink. They scored 7 versus Philly, 6 versus New York, 5 versus the Panthers, 5 in Vegas is their last 4 games. Like they're just dominating teams offensively right now. So I guess you are coming out of Vegas. That's a little scary. I don't know if that's what it was the first couple of years when teams were just getting used to having Vegas on the schedule, but I think that this is just a red hot offense right now, and they're playing a team that can't defend at all. So maybe not the time to overthink it.
They've earned themselves a break. All right, I'll go next. My best bet comes in on the Nashville Predators. They are plus 160 against the Florida Panthers. The Cats are minus 192. This total is at 6.5 right now. I know that the Predators are rolling, so you could argue that we're buying a bit high on this scrappy bunch, but I just think that they've now proven over a course of almost an entire season that they are just a good team, a deep team, a scrappy team, a team that can score with anybody in the league, basically. They've got a better goal difference than Vegas. They've got a better goal difference than um, Tampa, than like any teams that are in Detroit, Washington, the Islanders, obviously, any teams that are hanging around the Eastern Conference playoff race. Like they're right there in terms of like their process numbers than with anybody, like with any solid teams in the Western Conference. They're very good on the road. 21-10-3 on the year, 8-0-2 in their last 10, another 3-game winning streak. And the Panthers are dealing with some injuries as well. Matthew Tkachuk is questionable. Ekblad's still out. There's some other bodies that could be coming in and out of the lineup. So I think that Florida probably will play this one safe, given the opponent, and the fact that yeah, they're certainly in a race with the Bruins, and they're going to want to get right. But I don't think that they'll want to risk too many bodies in this one. So I think the Predators at +160 is a fine bet, Nick.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think this is a great bet. We've been saying for weeks, like 3 weeks ago, whatever, on Green Dot, I said that I thought the Preds were by far the best team in the wild card, aside from maybe if you want to, obviously, it feels weird to clump Vegas in there, but if they get healthy, whatever. But the Preds, they lead the league the last month in expected goals, and I don't think that surprising. I really haven't I tested them and been like, wow, this team doesn't look good. I think they've had a slightly softer than average schedule in there, but this team is just really dominating right now. We continue to love the way they look offensively, and like we've been saying, this was a team that kind of got into this month having had a below average team save percentage, and now they're getting great goaltending, and all of a sudden they look like a complete wagon. So yeah, it's probably somewhat of a high water mark. You're probably not going to be talking about them having like the best analytics in the league over like much of a sample moving forward, but it just feels like this is still a crazy long number for a team that's like playing like a true contender right now. And Florida's looked a lot more gettable this month too. Maybe they kind of respond here. I don't really think they have too many roster flaws, even with Ekblad on the sidelines. But they really have kind of offered a drop off in form. So it just feels like this price is pretty crazy when you look at the way these teams are actually heading into this game form wise.
Yeah, when I saw the number, I was a little bit shocked, and then you know, I'm I'm a casual at times. Like, I like to be a square better. And I was kind of just reading into Nashville, like off the 8-2 win against San Jose. Like, we can't say enough good things about them. Like, I kind of was buying into the getting ready to fade them narrative, and just there's just so much positive Nashville talk. So I was looking the other way to start here. I want just what do you think of the spot in terms of Nashville was just on this road trip. They come home, they play San Jose, and then it's just a quick trip down to Florida for one. Then they're back home. Like, is that spot concerning at all? I mean,
No,
basically
I
was an
don't think
off night
so.
against San Jose.
I don't really think so in this spot.
Yeah,
They're
I
kind of
mean,
just humming.
yeah, and the one thing I feel like the main thing that I just kind of look at is like how many games they've actually played in like however many nights. I think is the number one thing that's like consistently most prevalent about holding weight. And they played Saturday, Tuesday, and then this. So it is
Yeah.
still like a pretty good
Yeah.
spot rest wise. And then the other thing I think to like is like their last few games versus pretty like elite teams. They beat the Jets 4-2. They beat the Avs 5-1 in what was a really commanding game, and they've beaten the Knights, they've beaten the Kings. Like they really have, kind of dating back to that 9-2 thrashing that started the whole U2 concert thing and everything. They've been pretty damn good versus legitimately good teams. So I just this I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of a sucker's bet, and it feels like they're expecting a bit of a pushback from the Panthers, but I just can't see this right now. I think these teams are going to be competitive tomorrow.
I'll also say with that, I'm on the under here, under 6.5. Florida has been just huge under team this season. 24 overs, 43 unders. Nashville's been an under team as well, but not crazy, not like a true Barry Trotz-ish team. They obviously can score. So, but I do like the under here. I think that Florida, with their injuries, will be interested in playing a more lock it down team defense type style. Nashville as well. Obviously, they just need to keep getting points. So whatever way it is, whether it's overtime, however we get there, that leads me to under 6.5 here. Florida really, really good towards the under, and especially at home.
All right, Tim, you could close out the show and the week with your favorite bet for Thursday night.
Yeah, talk about suckers bet. This feels like a suckers bet. The Winnipeg Jets short favorites
Yeah.
-130 at the New Jersey Devils. Look, this Devils team, man, I know they beat Pittsburgh on Tuesday, but I still don't think that they're full value in terms of what they're capable of. And I think this Winnipeg team, I just love their roster. I think they're just in another tier, three or four tiers over the Devils here. I feel like I get an excuse to bet a good team. I was worried about not getting Hellebuck, but they do have a back-to-back on Saturday, Sunday. So I think that might be the chance to sit them. So I do need Hellebuck here. But yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I know it just feels suckery, but I just think it's a little short on this Jets team.
I'm with you. I think that, the Devils, they win that game against Pittsburgh. Jake Allen's been really good for them, and I think that they're, as a team, getting too much credit for Allen's performances in a way. So I'm with you. I think this is one where you just gotta keep it simple here and look at it and take it for what it is. And I can't make sense of this price, Nick.
Yeah, I'm close. I can see it, but I'm kind of going from like the I'm gonna pass avenue, but I'll be pissed if I didn't bet the Jets at this number. I can just still sort of see it with what's like in the Devils lineup right now. I don't know, maybe I'm being an idiot, but I still think like if they get goaltending, they're better. The look that I'm interested in is seeing what Brossoit or Hellebuck's save prop opens up at. I think that'd be the way I like to target this one, where the Devils get their chances. They've kind of been doing that versus everyone. Maybe they're a little invigorated by this final last gasp. I don't know. I didn't really have a ton here. The other note too that I would put out there, Tim, I'd say if you like the Jets, you take him Hellebuck or not. Brossoit's been unreal. He's been like, and I don't think it's just been cherry picked spots or whatever.
Yeah,
I
he's been
think
good for
he's been legitimately great. So I wouldn't be too concerned with that. And I think that'd be another note if you're talking about locking in the Jets here, when, especially because I do like, I can see how you're saying minus 130 is kind of short for sure. I wouldn't expect like to see better ever tomorrow, kind of regardless of who plays. So yeah, I think if you like it, you lock it in, you live with it. Brossoit's been great. Oh, even minus 120 is out there still. Yeah, so hopefully some of those hold up.
Yeah, I just have in my head the Rangers game from Tuesday where the difference really was goaltending, and so but you're right. Brossoit has been good enough. I hope this slate was weird. It seems like it was suckers bet city on this board. There's a lot of lot of cheese out there. It feels like, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yep. It's gonna be torture no matter what, as every night betting the NHL is. And on that cheery note, we'll end it for this week. Good luck with all your bets on Thursday night. Best of luck for those who are betting into the March Madness. I'm sure most of you are. So be careful out there in those dark waters. For Tim and Nick, I'm Michael. Thank you to our producer, Noah. We'll see you next week.